Have you heard these words said after a traumatic event? Get over it. You've got to move on. Suck it up. You need to let that go. And people tend to assume that you've got the tools to do so. Now, that traumatic event might be the death of a loved one, a divorce, accident or injury, job loss, or domestic violence. At the time of the event, you may not know where to turn. You've got your family and your friends, and they try to support you. You may investigate things like meditation or yoga or seeing a counsellor, and that's all part of the solution. What I feel is necessary is finding the community, the connection, and the corroboration around the specific trauma event, your tribe that shares your shared experience. I don't want to just survive and continue to exist after a traumatic event. I want to thrive and flourish and grow, and I believe you can too. Trauma is a nightmare experience. You can have no one to relate to even when you are surrounded by your family and friends. They try to support you, but over time you might not want to keep talking about it because you're becoming a burden, or you feel you're becoming a burden. Or you're not talking about it and they're trying to get you to talk about it. They try to empathise, and a lot of the time these people that are trying to support you have their own issues, and it can make it very hard for them. And over time, they may end up being the ones that are suggesting you need to move on. I see trauma, it's like a chronic disease. Now, when we have a chronic disease, we manage it. We might do special exercise, a special diet, have regular health checkups, take medication. But it's always there, and it can flare up at any time. And trauma is the same. Now, when we see a lot of this trauma, we see things like loneliness, isolation, mental health issues, stress, and disease. And that affects our entire lives, personally and professionally. I'd like to talk about a couple of statistics and a bit of a warning. Some of these may be confronting. In financial year 21, 3.4 million Australians sought professional assistance for mental health issues. Now, that's nearly 1 in 5 adults. 1 in 6 women and 1 in 16 men have been the victims of physical or sexual abuse since they were 15. And for marriages in Australia, 30% of first and 60% of second end in divorce. Lived experiences have been proven to be a powerful enabler to drive positive change, growth, empathy, and recovery. Now, while these experiences have occurred in our past, we are living with them and their impact every single day. As someone with a lived trauma experience, I have found that you can move from this surviving and existing to thriving and growing, because you are not alone. 12 years ago, I was seeing a counsellor for my childhood trauma, and they suggested a support group, so I went to my first meeting. Mind blown. It was a huge aha moment in my life. I sat in this circle of people, listening to them share. One talked about feelings of shame and worthlessness. Me too. Another talked about having real problems dealing with conflict situations. Me too. And a third talked about having really poor coping strategies. FYI, childhood coping strategies don't often translate terribly well into adult coping strategies. Ask me how I know. Now, intellectually, I knew that I couldn't be the only person who felt the way I did. But until I heard my thoughts and my words and my feelings coming out of the mouths of people with the same experience, I didn't truly believe it. I don't even know these people, and we now have this shared connection through our shared experiences. How often is someone telling you something and you'll suddenly go, "What, you feel that way too?" This group showed me the importance of community. And for my trauma, this group became my tribe. So let's talk about tribes. The tribal mentality causes us to seek out and connect with people with a shared common belief or interest or need. At the crux of it, we just want to belong. Seth Godin, who's an entrepreneur and blogger and wrote the book Tribes, said, "For millions of years, human beings have been part of one tribe or another. A group needs two things to be a tribe: a shared interest and a way to communicate." I'm just going to say that again. A group needs two things to become a tribe: a shared interest and a way to communicate. He did also say that there needs to be that sense of caring. Now, you all have tribes in your life. You just may not realise or particularly think of them that way. Work colleagues, parent group, fishing or golfing buddies, gym sisters, book club, TED Talks. So these are tribes that bring people together who want to talk about or do something. Or they're people who are disconnected and have a yearning. If you look at the Meetup platform, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different types of groups where people are coming together to connect. Do you like yodeling? I can guarantee you there are other people out there who do too. So what do we get from these tribes? We know they understand. They get us. Whether it is Lego or knitting or scuba diving or yodeling, you're being supported by people who have the same desire or enjoyment or like or need. So I ask you then, why do we shy away from finding support and being supported by others who have the same trauma as us? Do we think it makes us less than or weak or needy? I say no. Will it be confronting and maybe a bit eye-opening and perhaps a bit vulnerable? It might, but it will make you stronger and it will show you that you are not alone. The unexamined can't be understood. As humans, we don't grow without examination and learning. So if we move with Seth's idea of tribe, I've whittled that down into a thing that I like to call the 3 C's because I like a good alliteration. So the first C is that community, that circle of people. The second one is connection. Through those shared stories and experiences, you start to get that feeling of belonging and you build relationships. And the third is corroboration, confirmation you are not alone. Unconditional validation, which is very, very important for trauma survivors. So we've got the 3 C's, we've got a tribe, and now we've got a building block to thrive. So how then is that going to help me or you or the community or even the world? We'd start to see a reduction in the isolation, the loneliness, the stress and the disease. That in turn drops the pressure on our health system because disease will go down. Next, you'll start to see engagement and productivity start to increase and hopefully some happiness. And all of that impacts and aids on recovery. These tribal support groups become a link in your support chain. They become another tool in your kit bag for when you need it. They will complement any other strategies or groups that you already have in place. Or they may be that very first link for your support. Surviving is not enough. It's not enough. We need to start a movement to be able to help these trauma survivors with their lived and living experiences. We've got to make a big change so that we can help them move from surviving and existing to thriving and growing. The statistics have shown, and they have only increased over the last 3 years, that we need to support each other with our trauma. We need these groups to combat the loneliness and the isolation, the stress and the disease. And instead of waiting until after the fact to try and put these things in place, we need them right now. They need to be there as soon as possible for people after the trauma event. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be all rainbows and roses, or that this will happen overnight. That's not realistic. We can't always be happy and up and excited. It's not real life. And personally, the last 3 years for me have been a veritable roller coaster of up and down, with a couple of these thrown in for good measure. But when you find that tribe, that community, that connection, and that corroboration, you will always have support when you need it. So now I'm going to ask you to all get tribal. Don't worry, no war paint required. We'll use it as an acronym to get some steps to move forward. T, take action. What do you need to do for you right now? R, reflect. What is your trauma? Or who could you be helping? I, investigate. Jump on your search engine of choice and see if you can find a tribe. And if you can't find one, start your own. That's what I did. B, bite the bullet and believe. I told you I liked alliteration, right? It can be hard. It can be vulnerable. But Brené Brown says, vulnerability is the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. It is our greatest measure of courage. A, attend the tribe you find. Acknowledge you're probably going to need to go more than once, or you might need to try out a few until you find one that's a good fit for you. And L is to lead. Not everybody wants to jump up on a stage and share their story, and that's okay. Leading can be as simple as finding that family member or friend and helping them find their tribe. Show them what's worked for you. Show them they are not alone. So I'd like to leave you with 3 questions to think about. Number 1, do you need to find your tribe? 2, do you know someone who needs to find their tribe, and can you help them? And 3, how can we spread the word so that everybody has the opportunity to tribe and thrive? So remember the acronym TRIBAL. Go find your tribe so you can thrive, and we can learn to live with our lived experiences. Thank you.